Hey Eric, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hi, Quinn.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
Running around like crazy, it seems like
Yeah,
today. How about you?
pretty good, pretty good. Just a little heads up, we are live on YouTube, just to let you know.
Okay, thanks. I did see there was something that popped up that showed me that a minute
Okay.
ago. So I'm just getting ready to make my meeting minutes.
Sounds good.
So do you leave after work today for vacation?
No, I don't actually we actually don't leave till Monday.
And where are you going?
We're going to Hilton Head.
Okay. Is that still a hot spot?
Actually Hilton Head
It was
is
Myrtle
pretty
Beach, wasn't
yeah, it was Myrtle Beach was the big hot spot. So Hilton Head's actually been pretty we looked at the case numbers. It's been pretty mild, all things considered. And they've had mandatory masking down there on Hilton Head for a while now, actually.
it? Well, it should be fairly easy to tell, be able to kind of take the role. And then I'll just get into, I need to get the agenda up on my screen because I didn't print it.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then if I don't know if you want to, we you can if anybody wants to share their screen, we can do that as well.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, yeah.
Well, I've got them here.
Do you have a little option at the bottom of your toolbar that it's a little green button that says share screen?
Let's see. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if anybody wants to do that at any time in the meeting, they can just do that.
I didn't realize that. So if I do that right now, I've got dual screens. So what do you do to actually, if I needed to do that, what would you do?
You would just hit that share button, that share screen button,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it'll bring up. It's been a little while since I've done it, but it'll bring up whichever. It'll bring up. It'll give you an option as to which screen you want to share, and then you just click on the one you want to share. We can
Okay.
do a little. We can do a little test right now while no one's on, if you want.
I'm actually trying it right now. And I don't have anything on my screen other than this.
Yeah. Yep. That worked.
You did? Okay.
Yep.
So stop, and I can hit stop share.
That's right.
Neat. All right. I thought only the meeting host could do that.
Yeah. No. Yeah. There's.
Different setting.
Well, yeah, it just kind of depends on what the settings are. I set it to where anyone can share their screen. So
Okay. Well, that is good to know.
yeah, there's a lot of little nooks and crannies with Zoom that you kind of just figure out as you go. It's kind of funny.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
Good, how are you?
Good.
Mr. Howard, I presume?
Yes. Yes. I'm Eric.
I'm Shayla. Nice to meet
Hi,
you.
nice to meet you. And this is Quinn Welch from the mayor's office. I don't know whether you all have spoken before.
Yeah, hi Shayla. I believe we have met before once or twice, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
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 Good to see you again.
Yeah. Good to see you.
And just Shayla, just heads up, we are live on YouTube, just to let you know.
Okay. As I turn all my devices off.
Quinn was walking me through some of the other features that are available to us. So it's pretty interesting. I'll be able to, if I needed to, I don't know that there would be anything I would need to do it today, but I could share the screen with the rest of the group. And
Yeah,
I,
Eric, really the only thing I think would maybe be the agenda, just in case somebody doesn't have the agenda at their,
Yeah.
at arm's length or whatever. So.
Okay. Well, since you said that, I wasn't going to do it this way, but I will do it right now. I'll create a page just with the agenda. So I'm glad we talked through that. Okay. Here's another test, Quinn. You see that okay?
Looks good.
Okay, good. I will stop that for now and let's go on. Well, Ms. Lynch, Commissioner Ford speaks very highly of you. She was talking with me this morning about how on top of things you are.
Oh, I try to be. Some days I don't feel like that, but I try to be. Yeah, I've known Commissioner Ford for a long time and I enjoy working with him.
Yeah, I think I've known him since he used to work for Reach.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been a good person to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Every one of his different roles, and he's had quite a few.
Yeah.
On the homework item, do you anticipate that people will just have different assignments that that will come out of the meeting?
Yeah, well, I sent the subcommittee several items or the link for the work from the Neighborhoods and Transition Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
Will be some good foundational work. So I definitely didn't think people would be able to look through all that information by today. So
Okay.
I have some more information to send them that I've gotten from Councilman James Brown. So I'm going to probably be emailing that out to everyone today to review, because it's a lot of information, a lot of material. So that's going to be the homework assignment, is to review that, and that should hopefully help shape the work that we do.
There's Mr. Sexton.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Brady.
I must say good afternoon. Where am I today?
I'm Eric Howard.
Nice to meet you, Eric.
Nice to meet you. Thanks.
Thank you for getting all this coordinated and all that fun stuff.
Oh, you're welcome. And I don't know whether you know Quinn Welch in the mayor's office.
How you doing, Quinn?
Hey, good to meet you. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Just a heads up, we're live on YouTube right now.
And Quinn, are you you'll stay on by audio, but probably not on screen? Is that your plan?
Yeah. So what I do typically when the actual meeting starts is I just turn my video off so the viewers can see you guys better. And then I'll keep myself on mute as well. But if anybody needs anything throughout the meeting, just holler and I'll be back on.
Okay. Hello.
Good morning, everyone. David Shirey from
Good
Central
morning.
Christian.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So grateful to be with you.
Thanks for agreeing to serve with us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Eric Howard. I sent you some emails.
Yes, Eric, I know your name from the emails. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. I'm already starting to take attendance. So figure I might as well keep that up to date as much as I can.
Eric, how many more do we have coming?
To be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
I think now I should know your name, the person that's just
Hi, Rachel.
Rachel.
Oh, hey,
Hi. It says Lexington Habitat, and
yeah, I'll
I
fix
knew
that.
I'd seen the name.
I remember there was 2 individuals who said they definitely couldn't make it.
Mhm.
There were.
Yeah, Mr.
Hodge.
Hodge and Mr. Barclay.
Yeah.
Mr. Hodge asked me for the Zoom meeting
Oh,
information.
he did? Okay.
Yeah, this morning, so I'm not sure.
Like Councilmember Brown's trying to join.
And Reverend Shirey and Miss Childress, or is it Reverend Childress? I think.
No,
Okay.
just Rachel, just
Okay.
Rachel.
And Eric, you can call me David, please. You can call me David.
Quinn Welch is from the mayor's office, and he's been reminding us as we join that we are live on Facebook right now too.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm signing checks.
Ooh. That's fun.
Can we
Well,
jump in line?
yeah. Friday's check day and trying to get them done so the people who've got to get them in the mail can get that done. It's been a crazy morning. Getting ready for a few changes to our restore based on the executive order about masks.
Oh, Mr. Barclay is with us as well.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, vice chairs, it's what I have 10:30. Do you all want to start or wait another minute or two? Or?
It's up to you guys.
I'm cool to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, since we got a 2-hour time window, we'll go ahead and get started and let those jump in. I'll go ahead and call the Housing and Gentrification Subcommittee of the Mayor's Commission for Racial Justice and Equality to order. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ray Sexton. I'm the Executive Director of the Lexington Human Rights Commission, and I'm one of your co-chairs. Before we get into our welcome and introductions, I'm going to read a brief statement regarding this meeting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Senate Bill 150, as signed by the governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for this meeting. So we appreciate everybody's attendance for this meeting today. And we'll just go ahead and start. We'll do some brief introductions. Just say who you're with, what your name, who you're with, and any kind of opening statement you'd like to make, I think is fine. I'll hand it off to my co-chair, Shayla Lynch, and let her go first.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first subcommittee meeting. I'm excited about this, and we have some good work to do, but we've got some good folks around the table, so I'm very much looking forward to working with you all. I'm with Ampersand Sexual Violence Resource Center, and before my tenure here, I was worked at the Fair Housing Council for 15 years. So I'm very excited to still be doing housing work because it has my heart and my passion. So I look forward to working with you all and serving with you all.
Thank you, Shayla. Mr. Shirey, would you like to go next?
Glad to be with all of you. I'm David Shirey, Senior Minister at Central Christian Church since 2014. Grateful to be a part of this because our congregation has been very active in affordable housing over the years with our affiliation with Habitat. It's good to be on this with Rachel, and with St. James Place and our Central Apartments. Also our location here on Martin Luther King and in the East End. We feel a responsibility and a desire to be a part of something like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Rachel, would you like to go next?
Sure, I'm Rachel Childress, excuse me, CEO of Lexington Habitat for Humanity, and very honored to be working with a group like this on an issue that's near and dear to all of our hearts. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lori Brock.
Hi, I'm Lori Brock. I'm the priest at St. Michael's Episcopal Church, and we're over in the Glendover neighborhood area down from Crestwood Christian. Before I became a priest, I was an attorney general at Alabama, in the state of Alabama, and then I also worked with legal services, and one of the areas I worked in was housing discrimination, rent eviction, all of that law, and which in Alabama was just a delightful area to work in, as you can imagine. And we, in the neighborhood that we're in, we're behind Trader Joe's. One of the things that my congregation has consistently noticed is that in the 10 years since I've been here, housing prices have really risen, and the diversity of the neighborhood is being challenged in that way. And I suspect that we are not a tiny little microcosm of that in the city, that's across the board. And that is certainly raised concerns in my congregation about the greater impact that has on the landscape of Lexington.
Thank you. Mr. Russ Barclay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Russ Barclay. I'm the executive director with Lexington Community Land Trust. And as such, we're thankful to be a part of this conversation. I just want to note that I am really a representative of the organization, which is a community membership organization. So everyone that lives in Davis Park housing with the land trust is a member, and in effect is a decision maker in our organization's future and kind of current operations. So again, we're glad to be a part of this and hoping that we can achieve some impactful outcomes that really start to shape the future of housing justice in our community.
Thank you. Richard Shine.
Hi, my name is Rich Shine. I'm a professor of geography and a dean of faculty in the College of Arts and Sciences at UK. I've been there for 26 years. I'm honored to be with a whole lot of people who have feet on the ground. I'm a scholar and I write about race and racism in the American landscape in American cities.
Thank you. Robert Hodge, good to see you this morning.
Nice to be here, and hello to everybody. My name is Robert Hodge. I am a owner of Hodge Properties. I'm a real estate investor and developer in some of I feel the hardest hits area of gentrification. And I'm also the neighborhood president of Wynn Wells Brown Neighborhood Association as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dow.
Hi there, I'm Harding Dowell. I'm an architect with Group 4 Architecture Research and Planning. I grew up in Lexington, although Group 4 is based out of South San Francisco. We focus primarily on community-driven projects with a real focus on community engagement. Like Russ, I'm here as a representative for the design and construction community in our city, and look forward to unpacking a lot of the ways in which the way things have always been done have a tendency not to treat everyone in our community fairly. So, and that design is an important component of both the problem and the solution. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. And our council representative, Honorable James Brown, are you there? Okay, he might just be listening in. Before I turn,
hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry about that. This is
okay.
Councilman James Brown. I represent the 1st District in Lexington, which is north of Lexington that has a lot of the neighborhoods that are impacted by infill and redevelopment and experiencing gentrification and neighborhood change. I've worked with a lot of folks on this committee, and I look forward to working with the folks that I haven't had the opportunity to working with before. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, this committee is going to be unique in that some groundwork has been laid out by the commission, the Neighborhood and Transition Task Force that have been working since 2018, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So several people that are on this committee have been serving with that task force. So there's a lot of groundwork to be looked at, and we'll discuss how much we want to go by that as we move on. Certainly, one of the individuals that have been tasked for steering this big ship, this bigger commission, is Miss Rosalind Akins, and I'd like to turn it over to her for opening remarks and whatever she would like to say.
Thank you, Ray. First of all, let me thank each of you for taking time from your busy schedules to be a part of what can be a very unique and inspiring opportunity here in our city. On behalf of Dr. Gerald Smith, we thank you from the bottoms of our hearts. Our mayor is so appreciative. So I just want to kind of set the tone for what the mayor is expecting from this commission. You are one of 5 subcommittees that has been put together for this commission on racial justice and equity. I hope all of you have received the overall handout. You should have received that in an email with the purpose, the guiding principles, and the overall objectives. And so I just want to read the purpose of why this commission has come together. And the purpose is to assemble diverse community members to listen, discuss, and create empowering solutions that dismantle systemic racism in Fayette County. So each of the committees, that's the overall purpose. And so some guiding principles you're to use as you meet. First is acknowledgement, ask, address, and what's most important is some action. And so here are the overall goals. Number 1 is to identify both systemic and systematic practices of racism, which has fostered structural inequalities, challenges, and deficiencies in Lexington, Fayette County. Number 2, assess the historic marginalization of African Americans in this community. And then number 3, recommend and advocate the systemic changes that will protect and promote racial opportunity, diversity, equity, and unity. So I hope all of you all got a copy of that so you can refer to it at any time during your meetings. And then the last thing I just want to say in closing is that the other 3 things as you meet that we hope you will look at is number 1, truth. If this commission is going to be successful, we've got to deal with the truth. There can't be any sidestepping or surface skimming. We must deal with the truth. And what we get out of this work is what we put into it. So we hope all of you will, put your best self in so that we can get some great things out of your subcommittee. The third thing we hope will drive you is a love for this city and the fact that we want to make Lexington a better place for the next generation. And you must believe that every human being deserves dignity, freedom, and equality. And the last thing is commitment. This is going to be hard work. It may even be some painful work, but we pray that none of you will throw in the towel. You'll stay committed to the task, and that there will be some action that will take place that's going to make a difference in Lexington. And so I thank you. We look forward to working with you guys. And Dr. Smith and I are here anytime. You have an excellent person on behalf of the city that's going to work with you. And if you have questions, if you need data, that person will get all of that for you. So I'm zooming out. Have a great meeting. And if you need anything, let us know.
Thank you so much, Ms. Akins. Appreciate it. Now, we previously supplied an agenda for this meeting. The goal is to, review the purpose of the commission, as well as as mentioned in that handout, is even though there's certain objectives and guiding principles that are laid out, there's a lot of leeway for each subcommittee to ultimately set their own goals and objectives. So we appreciate Councilmember Brown providing us all the information regarding the task force on neighborhoods in transition. So if you hadn't had a chance to look at that, that'll be some good guiding principles that we'll talk about now. But I think Shayla, we were going to talk about purpose, but Ms. Atkins kind of touched on the purpose. Is there anything you want to add?
Just as we move and transition into kind of setting some goals, just consider what Ms. Aikens said, and this is just a brainstorming session to start off with, and then we're going to naturally narrow it down due to our time constraints. We have to narrow it down rather quickly, but I hope that we can just have a good fertile discussion about where we want to go. And some issues we want to definitely tackle so that we can propose some solutions.
Yeah, we've been given a 60-day window of time to put something together and get something back to the mayor. However, there has been some correspondence circulating late yesterday that we may not be held firm to a 60-day timeline. It may be a little bit longer. How much longer? We don't know at this point, but there is some discussions about prolonging this and providing us an opportunity to get a little more in depth regarding the situation at hand. So with that, we're going to kind of go to the brainstorming session. Like I mentioned before, back in 2018, Councilmember Brown instituted a task force on neighborhoods in transition that have been working diligently since 2018 to study this issue that we're tasked with studying and coming up with solutions. There have been a list of recommendations that the task force has come up with, as well as some things that are still on the table that they are considering. So my question for this group is how much do we want to rely on that information, or do we want to kind of go our own way and kind of blaze our own trail as far as some of the issues that we're facing with some of the things that we have to come up with? So I'll just throw that out there.
I was so impressed with the work that you have done in these past 2 years. I did read through the minutes and some of the reports, and I've just got to express my gratitude for what you all have done these past 2 years. It would be foolish on our parts to think we would just start off on some other track without beginning, I would hope, with what you have done, introduce all of us to some of that, because it's just some remarkable work that will benefit whatever conversations we have. So thank you for what you have done so far.
Yeah, I think we should certainly use it. I don't think we should feel bound by anything with it. I think we need to feel free to tackle it, go beyond it, because that task force is going to pick back up.
Right.
Finished with this.
Anyone else? All right. So with that, what will be some of our? Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Dow.
Sorry, I apologize. I couldn't find the unmute button. The one thing I would say in reading the sort of initial recommendations of the task force is that I think there's a lot of great starting points. I think one thing that to Mrs. Aikens' point is the focus on action. There's a lot of encourage, or those kinds of words in the task force's work to date, and I think if we can build on those to find sort of concrete action that could be made, I think that would be an improvement.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. With that, let's we're on number 3. I can't find my agenda. let's talk about some of our goals and objectives. What would be some of our goals that we want to accomplish in these 60 days? Oh,
Sorry, I posted the agenda. I was
oh,
able-
sorry. I thought I got booted off for a second.
No, I don't know how it changed what you all see, but I just wanted to be able to share the agenda. Does it jump? Sorry, that's the agenda, but I can take it back
Oh,
off.
fine. Okay. So what would be some, go ahead, Mr. Howard.
I'm sorry, I thought it would just show up on where my face was. I didn't realize it would change everything that you all were seeing on the screens. Sorry
Oh,
about
that's okay. All right, so let's talk about some of our goals and objectives. What do we see that, what kind of things does this group want to tackle? Obviously, looking at the purpose, we need to get into some of the history of what we're dealing with to identify the systemic and systematic practices of racism, which has brought us to this point. Obviously, there's going to be some data. I'm glad to see we have the professor here that has written about some racial discrimination. Maybe he would like to chime in about some of the information that he may have that may be useful for us.
Come on, I get to be put on the spot first. I guess I've been doing that to students all my life, so it's only fair.
Go. It's a payback.
Yeah, I'm an interesting kind of scholar. I'm a qualitative scholar. I work with oral histories. I work with all kinds of data. I'm not a mapper. Some of you may or may not know, I noticed that some of my work is in that neighborhoods. I hadn't realized that in that neighborhoods in transition document. I'm happy to bring those things out. I'm going to guess the kinds of things I work with are the kinds of things that all of you these days are intimately familiar with. I would say 5 years ago, nobody was. It's, you know, the kind of usual, especially government things like redlining and racial covenants and those kinds of things. I'm happy to provide some perspective, but I do have access to and perhaps more in my administrative role, to people who are good mappers. And I know the folks who did the mapping for the Neighborhood and Transition Task Force. They come out of our community map shop primarily at UK. And I would be happy to, and I think most of those folks, I don't do digital mapping, but many of my colleagues do. And I think they have a pretty good relationship with LFUCG and with the Office of Planning and have good database skills. That if there's something that we felt like we needed that wasn't in that document, I'm certainly happy to be the conduit to try to find some of those things.
Okay.
If I could build off that, Richard, I think that, you know, the thing that brings to mind for me is that I think we'd be remiss when we're talking about structural issues to not look at our zoning ordinance, whether there are, you know, its historic structure is one thing, its current structure is another, but I think a real deep dive into what the language of our zoning ordinance really means for communities of color, and how some of those historic, like redlining and other historic means of racism are still present, even if they're not explicit.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's an absolutely spot on comment. I mean, it strikes me that our, whatever, like in 1932, is that the original SEGO plan and the zoning ordinance, which lays the foundation for that, is put into place at the height of Jim Crow. And those things are always laid into that groundwork. I think there also are some significant movements in planning. I'm not as familiar with Lexington's planning ordinance as I am with Woodford County's, but I do some planning teaching, and there certainly are ways to challenge the kind of old Euclidean kind of early 20th century stuff that basically just fixed into place about 400 years of practice. Yeah.
And then the challenge becomes, you know, how deep of a dive do we take? We got 60 days. How do we juggle that with some plans of action?
So I'll just say this and then I'll shut up for a little while on the planning side. I like this focus. I mean, if we've got the background stuff of I hate this. I really don't like that term neighborhoods in transition. I just have to admit, I will just lay that out there.
I join you in that. We can have an off-camera conversation about that.
We don't need an off-camera conversation. We need an on-camera conversation about the passivity of that particular phrase and the ways in which it doesn't attribute any agency and suggests that history isn't something that we make or the present isn't something. That's my professorial polemic for the day. Now I lost track of where I was. What were we talking about? I think that going forward, I don't think we need to do a deep dive into planning. I think following Harding's suggestion, what we need to do is, if we're going to look for solutions, figure out what kinds of things that are in the contemporary planning toolkit, which would let us do these kinds of things. And that's a little bit easier. And we can do that in 60 days, I would think.
Absolutely. There's no reason for us to rewrite or rebuild the wheel here. There are cities who have made great strides. And I think looking at those examples is a good place to start.
Pop on here. David may echo this. I am constantly amazed at the people who don't know the story, and they hear it at an academic level, and I like, we learn to preach. You preach up here, but it doesn't take root until you get it personal, until people hear the personal stories of how redlining has impacted. When people hear the personal stories about how gentrification, that this is not a theoretical event of laws and codes on the books and of history. This is living out now, and it is hurting people. It is creating situations in which people cannot thrive and live in this city the way that we hope they would. And so, I think that how do we tell the story in that way? And then how do we get people and invite them to listen to that story? It's shocking to me, the information out there, but it's also not accessible to people. None of us want to stare at a computer screen anymore, by the way, and so I wonder, are there sort of, through lyric theater or something, are there ways that we can continue to tell the story about how this impacts people personally at a deep level? The Davis Bottom story on KET is just a great story. And I didn't know anything about it until I saw it, but there were real people there. And so I just keep that sort of in front of us. How do we tell the story? How do we help people hear the story?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I just want to echo just what you said and how much I appreciate Rich's honest admission. I don't like that language, that if we're going to be truthful, and we've been given permission to call things correctly and honestly, then I find that to be a very helpful way to start, that we can be truthful, we can deal with language. Harding's point about how certain words, you need to know the history of what that word really means. And I find that to be a very, very helpful goad for us to be, to acknowledge. And then, as Lori just said, to be able to listen to real stories of people who have been hurt. That's just something I find to be very invigorating.
Can I, sorry, you're speaking my language in many ways. I agree with you completely. And I worry about being a little patronizing. So humor me and don't ever be afraid to call me out on something I say, please, anybody. I agree with you completely about the stories. I will tell you that one of my stock lines when I travel the country, in fact, the world, talking about American race and racism and processes of racialization, I have a kind of I hope it's a kind of a humorous thing where I point out that what my job really often is talking to white people about white hegemony and white supremacy. Because when it comes to telling the stories about people done wrong, the people who have been done wrong to know those stories better than I do. They don't need to be told those stories. And in fact, I think, we've seen it in everything from the kind of esoteric academic literature to the manifesto for Black Lives Matter, that one of the things we want to emphasize is, in fact, the ways in which people in those situations have actually been resilient and been able to build communities despite these things. And so I hope, and I agree with you, I like to tell these stories and I like to figure out how to do it. But I would also hope that we do it in a fine line and think about who our audiences are. The audience at the lyric may not need to hear some of the stories that we want to tell. We might be better off telling them
I think we lost. Did he freeze it? Did he just freeze on mine? There we go.
Sorry, did I freeze on you?
You did.
Well.
I mentioned the lyric because Whitaker's a friend of mine, so I get
no,
that.
I absolutely love the lyric, and I try to use it in everything we ever do. And Donald Mason was an old friend. And don't worry, don't get me wrong. I think we have to. The bottom line here is I think we remember how we tell these stories, who gets to tell them, who our audience is, and I think it's going to be different in different cases. That's all.
And in the preliminary meetings with all the co-chairs, we've been informed that, any kind of information that we need, any kind of access to documentation from the city, certainly they will do everything that they can to get us any and everything that we need in that respect. So certainly the history, diving into the history, what else are some other goals that we can look toward for this subcommittee?
I'd like to chime in, not Ray, not to move us back unnecessarily, but just I wanted to round out a point on the history, as I have, and here in the conversation, hear a lot about telling the stories of impact and how people are affected, which I think is really important. But also, I think it's important to educate the community on policies, laws, like things that have actually that you can't debate the impact, or you can't explain it away. It's like, these are hard facts about how our country, how our city has enacted laws in order to deprive people of justice. And so I think be able to even, as a way to complement the stories, is also just to be able to drive in on the history from a policy and law standpoint, and also understand, like, this isn't the housing and gentrification things that we find ourselves in today isn't a product of mere market conditions. This has been something that has been legislated, and I think if people can understand and start to learn that part of the history, I think it can provide a constructive path forward. Because at that point in time, it's like, hey, this is reality. This isn't, again, about those who have and don't, or know how to invest in properties, or don't know how to invest in properties. Like, no, there have been things that have restricted people's right to their rights and their abilities to grow in a lot of ways.
Russ, I just shared an example with everybody in the chat box of a community-based project that does exactly what you're talking about in some ways.
Okay. Keeping on with the goals and objectives, what else do we see this committee diving into as far as formulating our final report to the mayor?
Hey, Ray, this is Councilmember Brown.
Yes,
hey,
sir.
I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Russ just shared about policies. I think people, I think one of the things that we have to talk about and acknowledge, and I think we have in the task force, is how local policies, and not past policies, recent policies, exacerbate some of the issues that we're talking about, in regards to what our growth strategy is and how it impacts neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, and neighborhoods with Black and brown folks in them. Just because if we're completely focused on infill and redevelopment, that's going to have an impact on those folks that don't necessarily have as many options as other people. And then also how that impacts housing affordability in Lexington and what that leads to in regards to displacement. So I think when we're talking about policy, let's not get hung up on traditional and old policies. It's the current policies that are in place that are impacted this. Did I get cut off?
No, you're good. Thank you. Appreciate that. I was writing.
We're all nodding if you can't see us.
Okay. Anyone else?
How do we create places for us to hear what the communities who are being most impacted by this talk to us?
What was the question again?
I would just say, I was looking at the ask and I was always thinking like, how, in the church, we just love to have listening sessions. That's our favorite word for that. David's laughing, but I wonder, how do we create spaces or ways for people, and certainly in the time of coronavirus, that's always a challenge, but for communities who are most impacted by housing affordability, by lack of good dependable transportation. I mean, neighborhoods are great, but if they can't get anywhere because you don't have a car, that's a problem. Neighborhoods that don't have grocery stores, that don't, affordable. How do we create spaces for the people who live in those neighborhoods to tell us what they need? Because, I worry that a lot of it is like what I think they need, but I've got Trader Joe's 2 blocks from me, which I understand has some very interesting policies about how they decide where their stores go in. So I'm just curious, is there a method for that? Is there a way? Has that been done? I mean, I don't know.
The Neighborhoods in Transition Task Force had a few community forums that were open to the public for comment and feedback. And that doesn't mean that we can't have some kind of platform that maybe we can allow, because I think that's a really good idea, is to give the public an opportunity, since we don't really have a public comment period during our meetings. We're not allowed that at this time. So I would love for us to create some kind of space for the public to give input and feedback to kind of form how we create our action steps for the city. I don't know, Mr. Howard, do you know of a platform that we could easily or quickly create and provide to the public to be able to provide feedback?
No, I'm trying to think, and I don't know of anything that readily springs to mind for me that would be the most immediate. And actually, I stopped to look at an email for just a second, so I was a little bit distracted, but I just found out the YouTube link isn't working. So what we thought was being live streamed apparently isn't being live streamed at the moment. So this kind of goes to your question a little bit in terms of being able to provide the public with information as quickly as possible. But I'll have to do some research to see what those that maybe Councilmember Brown has an idea, but I'm not usually working in the venue for trying to communicate with the public as quickly as possible.
And it may be worthwhile to work with some of the historically Black churches and their pastors, because there is already a network of that formed, and they have called us together at Whitaker Ballpark to meet, and so there's already a system there in some of those communities. Even if people don't go to that church, they're in those neighborhoods, so that may be an already built-in system to use for a short turnaround.
And I know from a recent email from Commissioner Ford, he kind of sent us a tentative schedule, and on that schedule was a town hall with the commission's co-chairs. So but I don't have any details about that. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I know there is a tentative town hall that is scheduled that I'm assuming will be public and available for public input. I'm assuming that, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's on July 28th, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. But yeah, we don't have any other information about what that'll look like. Certainly during this pandemic, it brings a lot of challenges. And I do know, I mean, granted, it's not a public forum, but there is an email address that has been provided with all the commission's information where people can submit questions or comments, and I assume those will be shared with the committee as they come in. I haven't seen anything come in that people have asked questions about or made any comments about what they think this committee should be looking at, but I'll echo kind of what Shayla said. The Councilmember Brown has done a good job with the task force on involving the community at pretty much every step of the way, and many listening sessions where feedback was given, and then that feedback was even explored a lot further. So certainly, how we can do it is going to be challenging, but I appreciate Ms. Brock's suggestion on involving the churches. That might be a good idea. So. Anything else on our goals and objectives? And again, I recommend and advocate systemic changes that protect and promote racial opportunity, diversity, equity is certainly an end goal. We have to get that report. We have to have some sort of adequate recommendations for the mayor to act upon. And I was kind of watching one of the other subcommittees meet to kind of see what they were doing and what they were talking about, and certainly that's a concern of their. I think I was watching the Health Disparities Committee, and the question is on whether or not 60 days is enough time to give adequate remedies. But the way they put it is, we can recommend something in the short term as immediate action, but certainly we can still look at it as a long-term goal and continue the work as we move on. Was what we're given is kind of like a springboard into long-term action. So we'll definitely keep the committee up to date as far as what that's going to look like. So anybody else?
And I piggyback off what you said, Ray, because I felt the time crunch. I was like, what can we really do? Because it's really less than 60 days, because we have to give
Not true.
time to write the report and then give it to the chair so they can write their bigger report. But I think that one of our recommendations could be that we have the task force or this committee continues on to continue the work. That could be a recommendation. So I think that we're not kind of bootstrapped by the timeline. We can recommend that this work continue. So
I was just going to ask in regards to the policy work that we want to do to get to action. In relationship to the task force that has been going now for 2 years, I found your work that tried to surface those vulnerabilities to gentrification, to displacement. You tried to focus in on what are the factors that make a neighborhood vulnerable to this dynamic. Is that something that we could at least hear from you just in a small way? Because if those are the vulnerabilities that make gentrification and all of its side effects occur, then it just strikes me that any policies we would try to address would overcome those or try to preclude those from having their effect on neighborhoods. Is that possible to do, or is that something we should leave for the continued work of the task force?
It's up. What do you guys think?
Was that a question? Was that a question?
I was asking the question of could we at least hear from those of you that developed that after so much work, what those vulnerabilities are?
Councilman Brown, do you want to take that or?
Yeah. I think it took us a while to have a conversation about the vulnerabilities, but I think some of them are obvious. What can make a community vulnerable? Some of the criticism, and I hope I'm not getting away from your question, but some of the criticism that the task force has endured is that we're talking at a too high of a level, and what I thought this subcommittee could have the benefit of doing is getting a little closer to the people and talking about some of the issues and why we have to address them at such a high level, just based off of some of the factors that exist with addressing these issues. One of the things that I think that we're going to have to talk about is the rub against the developers in the that are redeveloping and are investing in some of these neighborhoods, in the residents that have traditionally lived there. On one hand, the redevelopment and reinvestment is wanted and needed, in the opinion of some of the people in the neighborhood, but then it's not from some of the other people in the neighborhood. So I think at some point we got to address those tensions. And then as far as the vulnerabilities, I mean, I think we've laid most of them out. But I guess to your point, to try to work to address and to make those not vulnerabilities, or make folks less vulnerable in those neighborhoods, I think is worth exploring. I don't know if I answered your question or took us down another road, but I just think that the task force has been criticized for just being too high level, and that we need to have a conversation closer to the ground, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I take your word for that, and my comments were simply a way of how we get down to that ground level. So I appreciate that response.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else?
So
Does anybody have, go ahead.
yeah, I'm not sure this is relevant. I was just listening to Councilman Brown and thinking about those vulnerabilities and how you get down to the ground. And I guess I'm thinking, and I have looked through the task force materials, but not in enough detail. Maybe this answer is in there. I feel like so many of the things that have happened in Lexington in the past, whether they're informal, whether they're about development decisions, or whether they're legal stuff that Russ is talking about, it kind of matters who's making the decisions and who's at the table. And I feel if we could identify some of those places where the on the ground things are happening and decisions are being made, that might be one place to start, is who's actually in the conversation and at the table.
I agree. I think another place that decisions are made, where the decisions are being made, is who owns the property and who doesn't, and who has the opportunity to own property and who doesn't.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
I believe that task force had a series of maps on property ownership and on the concentration of particular developers or investors, which sort of identified sort of spatially the more vulnerable neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I'll lean to the co-chairs on how they would want to address the mapping, because when we got into the mapping work, it took quite a bit of time and quite a bit of conversation, and then you have to address how data, you got to just be careful about how you address and work with data, because the last thing you want is for people to accuse you of manipulating it to give the information that you want it to give. So I think the co-chairs need to make a decision about how deep we go into the maps and what we use them for.
All right. Yeah, I mean, certainly we can decide that as a committee, because certainly we could go down many rabbit holes and get lost of the main function of this in the time frame that we have. So with that, as far as this committee, how often do you see us meeting? Meeting frequencies, things of that nature? I know that during this meeting today, the main commission would like for us to go ahead and map out our meeting schedules, so they are publicized, so people that are joining us on YouTube we can have the most people watching. And then I know a couple of people expressed concerns about just meeting during the day, during working hours, things of that nature. So certainly we can address that issue today as well. I mean, we could do some during working hours, some during off hours. I'm very flexible and agreed to kind of make this a priority. So anytime that you guys want to meet is certainly fine with me. What are your all's thoughts on meeting frequencies?
Do you like once a week, once a week, a 2-hour meeting, maybe twice a week, a 1-hour meeting, or whatever works best? Pull out those calendars.
I tend to think, go ahead, Richard, sorry.
I was gonna say, I'll also say, I mean, I know I have the privilege of choosing my working hours and I have an empty nest, but I will meet at any time. I'm happy to meet in evenings or any other time.
I would like to meet in the evenings because we are talking about people that are out working. I think they need to be involved, just like you said. Somehow we need to get them involved with this conversation because we're not the people that's the income that the gentrification is affecting, I guess. So basically, I think we need to give those people opportunity to be able to be, so they can say whatever they need to say as well. So maybe a couple days a week, maybe an hour in the evening, maybe one in the daytime, so everybody gets opportunity.
Good idea.
But yeah, that's true. But the way that these, as of right now, it doesn't matter if we meet in the morning or in the afternoon. As of right now, there's no public comments during the meeting times. And there's no way people can access us directly to ask a question while we're meeting. So
I understand that, but I'm saying for people that are looking at it on YouTube, they're at work right now. So they're not accessing anything. So I think they should have the opportunity to do it live as well as we are.
Sure, absolutely.
Robert, when you talk about the evening, just for clarification on my part, are you speaking like 7 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. or what is ideal for you in that range?
I think anytime after 6, I think will be fair.
So maybe like a 6:30 p.m. meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Do you all a preference for day of the week?
I already have standing Zoom meetings on Monday and Wednesday nights. And I mean, I don't know if David has this, but that's when a lot of clergy meetings, for exactly the same reason Mr. Hodge mentioned, is that people need to meet in the evening. So I tend to be heavier on night meetings. So it might be helpful to have Mr. Hodge's suggestion about one in the daytime and one at night would probably be easier for me to work around than having both of them in the evening.
If it would be an evening at that 6:30 time, Thursday is an open is
yeah,
Thursday for me. And as far as going back and forth day to evening, that's wonderful.
What about the suggestion of a 2-hour? Week, 5-week timeline or not?
I'd rather do
I'm sorry.
than twice a week. It's just, I think its scheduling would be easier, and I've got no problem with the 6:30 time, depending on day of the week and some conflicts. Thursdays are open for me as well.
And if I may, while there's a little bit of a lull in your discussion, I will just reiterate, I think it's been said once by email, but the YouTube live streams are then posted about 24 hours later. So they're available to watch after they're not only live, but later as well. It just takes about 24 hours for them to be returned to YouTube as a stored video or video record.
Yeah, I would weigh in that I think a meeting time of at least an hour and a half would be important. I think an hour, it's going to take us we've got to get acclimated to one another and how to have conversations, meaningful conversations, drive towards solutions over a platform that many of us are still adjusting to. Putting that into an hour time frame, I think is going to be difficult. Whereas at least 90 minutes gives us time to get into a flow of conversation and gives us, I think it just would be better. I do think, within a 60-day time window of driving towards some solutions. I mean, I think at least once a week, if not more, is going to be necessary in order to drive towards that. So, and I do really appreciate the Robert's suggestion around evenings. I know for the Community Land Trust, I mean, we do a lot of neighborhood meetings, and we typically gear them towards like 6 o'clock and after, just so that we can have higher rates of participation.
Let me ask a question that may have to do with what we're allowed or not allowed to do. Is while we are one of the smaller subcommittees, it's still a big meeting. And is there going to be opportunities if we choose to split out into, say, a group that's going to look at a specific issue in a deep dive? Do those meetings need to be public, and can those meetings be scheduled, sort of independently and later?
Mr. Dow, I can answer that question. As of right now, no, there's not going to be an opportunity for those kinds of breakout teams, just because we've got to make all of these meetings open, and we just don't have the capacity to be able to support those types of breakout meetings in order to make them streamable and to make them open and all that. So unfortunately, no, not that's not an option at this time.
I understand.
So I hear Thursdays, 6:30 to 8. The next Thursday would be the July 16th. Does that work?
Work for me.
Are we saying every Thursday is going to be our day to meet? Is that what we're saying, or just next Thursday?
I'd like to get it on the calendar like every Thursday.
Yeah, because I think it's what they want to. I think
Yeah.
it's what they want us to do is come up with our schedule.
Yeah. And if we need to add a day or a meeting to get the work done, we can.
Yeah, and just a quick heads up, you don't, if you just want to schedule the next meeting today, you can do that and then schedule the rest later. But if you schedule the next one today, it allows us to make it a regular meeting, which allows you all to discuss things that may not be on the agenda. So we just need to get that first meeting scheduled. That's not to say you can't go ahead and schedule others, but that's the crux of it, really.
My preference is we get them all. We get our standard meeting on the calendar going forth for at least the 60 days. And then if we want to add, but.
I agree.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm. So do we want to do every Thursday?
Yeah.
At the 6:30
Yes.
time, or vary it during with the daytime one, or keep 6:30?
6:30 works for me.
Works for me as well.
I do have a once a month obligation on a Thursday night, but I don't think that should stop us.
Yeah, works for me.
All right, then that would be the July 16th, 23rd, 30th, August 6th. Potentially.
And then you had those other dates, Shayla, the ones you suggested about the reports and all that. Do you have those handy?
So working from the timeline we were initially given, the mayor would like the full commission's report by August 30th. So the co-chairs has asked the subcommittee co-chairs to get them our subcommittee report by August 19th. So Rand and I would probably need at least a week to pull together and write that report. So we were thinking we would start working on writing the report on August the 10th. So meetings would hopefully be done by the 10th. Our subcommittee meetings will be done by August 10th to give us time to pull everything together to give commission co-chairs. So potentially our last subcommittee meeting would be August the 6th. Until unless further notice, until they give us more details about the extension of time, which I hope they definitely do give us that extension of time. So
I want to follow up on Quinn's comment. We can't have separate meetings that aren't public, but we can have individual assignments. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. You're free to do work on your own and assign individual work to be done, in between meetings and that kind of thing. It's just we can't have subgroups of the subcommittees, and because then at that point those subgroups or breakout teams or whatever you want to call them, those become open meetings, and we just don't have the capacity to take that on.
I suspect some of us, if not all of us, will need to have some assignments that we feed back to the group to facilitate the writing of the report.
Definitely, that would be great. All right, so we have Thursdays, starting next week, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. via Zoom. And the city should send us the Zoom link prior to the meetings as they did today.
Yes. Sorry about that.
We got here, never apologize until you have to.
Does anybody have anything else they would like to add regarding any of the goal setting, meeting times, things of that nature?
I just have a question for Shayla and Ray. So just like Dr. Shine had been putting some resources in the chat box, as we are pouring through different resources that are educational or informative, how would you all prefer us to share those with one another? And then is there an opportunity to provide those same resources to the general public?
I will defer that to Mr. Howard, because I believe he is like our assigned repository of things, right? Is that correct, Mr. Howard?
Yes, more or less. So the question of sharing information, reports, or if it's assignments, as Ms. Childress talked about, I think anything that you all want to do, if you want to send emails to one another to provide information, that kind of data, I think that's fine. If you want to copy me on it, it's fine, but there's no reason I would say that you all couldn't share that among the subcommittee group. And there was another part of that I was going to try to answer as well. If there are resources that you all are looking for from us, if you just let me know what I'm asked to do, I'm going to share with the entire subcommittee. And I think that pretty well covers it, but if I haven't answered the full question, just let me know.
I think the second part was in, as we are looking at different reports and resources, is there a mechanism that can make those available to people that are viewing, so the general public?
That I'm going to check with Quinn if he can pop in for a second, because I think there may be an opportunity to post some of those resources on a web page, or is that not?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you restate that question?
Sure. Yeah, just wondering the resources and the reports that we're looking at here to help inform our solutions and recommendations. Is there a way to make those available to the general public as well, such as people that are viewing the either the recorded or the live feeds of this conversation?
Are you just wanting to make them available on the commission's webpage? Is that what you're talking about, or make them? Do you want to share them like during the meeting, or what would the?
Yeah, it's just a general question. Like,
yeah.
What's available to us?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of, if we're reviewing, for example, a document with certain statistics or a map or that kind of thing, and discussing that, we can certainly do a screen share so that map or document is viewable on the video. If we want to post things after the fact, like on our commission webpage, I'll have to have a discussion with our public information officer about that, just because they're the ones in charge of managing the webpage. But yeah, we're certainly able to share whatever documents that you guys discuss, do a screen share on the YouTube stream if that's kind of what you had in mind. But anything that's posted to the webpage, I'll talk to our PIO about.
Do y'all use Trello? No.
No.
Do you, so it's a cloud-based software that I always call it like the sticky notes, and so you can organize things. It may be I mean, it's pretty easy to use, but it's a way it keeps the emails that everybody gets with links. You would put them on sort of this Trello.com, and you can create a bulletin board and put stuff there and in categories. You could have like the statistics sheet, ordinances, essays, websites, instead of the 7 million emails that you'll get, and then you can't find the one you need. So Quinn, are you the tech person for this group?
I've pretty much been assigned to assist with the YouTube streams and set up Zoom meetings. Anything to do with like the web page or anything like that, that's more PIO / depending on what exactly it is / staff liaison. So that would be.
Well, if nobody's familiar with it, like I don't think anybody's has the capacity to like learn new stuff, but it is an easy way to organize lots of information coming. The Humane Society uses it actually. You know, they have their pets and stuff up like that. So it's pretty easy to use, but it may be a worthwhile tool to help us keep lots of information organized. And you can create it, like you can create a group and we could all access it. And I think that there's even a way to have a public part of it. So if there was a section that we needed to share, sounds like not, but that is an option that's out there, and it's free and pretty easy to use.
And you said it's called Trello?
Yeah,
Trello.
Yeah, yeah.
And Eric,
And again,
an existing resource that might be simpler and easier. I agree. Trello is a great tool. Is there's obviously an existing Google Drive structure that the city is using, because I'm looking at the task force on neighborhoods and transition stuff right now. If there's a way to just create a branch of that for us that we can dump things into, that may be something that people are more familiar with in the short term.
All right. Just to transition as we start to wrap up, on the next item on the agenda is homework. So I have some further documentation that I want to email you all today that I received from Councilman James Brown about some of the work that the Neighborhoods in Transition has done. So I'm going to email that to you all. But just to task you with, if you're not familiar with all of the work, just to give you some time to look through all of that data and documentation, because I think it's going to be, as I said earlier, a great foundation for our work. So between now and our next meeting on next Thursday of next week, is to review all that documentation, or as much as you can, because I know we're all very, very busy and have other commitments, to review that and come back to the next meeting ready to tackle some issues, because I've written down all kind of the goals and objectives that we discussed today, but to start to fine tune and narrow down some on the issues that we really want to focus on and create some movement on. So homework is to review some of the documentation and then come up and let that, generate some new ideas, some new directions we could possibly go in based on the work that the task force has already done. Or maybe there's some gaps that the task force hasn't met that we can fill too. So just try to come back to the next meeting with some intended goals and some things we can start to discuss and take some action on. Any questions, comments, concerns, any feedback? All right, well, shall we wrap up then and adjourn?
So moved.
Could we just say thanks to Shayla and Ray for taking this on and leading us through this. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. As I said earlier, housing is a passion of mine and has my heart. So I'm just excited to be able to continue this work with such an awesome group of individuals. So let's go forth and conquer.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll have a great day, a great weekend, and we look forward to convening again next Thursday.
Do the same.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
bye-bye.
Great to meet you.
Bye.
All right, thank you all.